Welcome. Our presentation will be delivered by our team of dedicated professionals that have worked together to ensure the successful inclusion of Bradley into the school community. A person with an intellectual disability has significant problems with problem solving, thinking and reasoning. People with intellectual disabilities are able to learn new skills and knowledge, however they learn at a slower rate. Each child with an intellectual disability will present differently as there are varying degrees within the intellectual disability diagnosis. It is thought that 1% of the population has an intellectual disability, and of that 1%, 85% have a mild intellectual disability. Children with a diagnosis of a mild intellectual disability can grow up to be independent adults with an effective support network. There are varying signs of an intellectual disability in children. For some children, signs will appear in infancy, while other children may not exhibit signs until school age. This is due to the varying levels of severity for intellectual disability. The most common signs of intellectual disability are achieving developmental milestones late, talking late or difficulty talking, slow to master self-help skills, trouble remembering things, difficulty understanding actions with consequences, difficulty regulating their behaviour, struggles with logical thinking and problem solving. Often children with a severe to profound intellectual disability exhibit other health problems such as seizures or mood disorders. What causes an intellectual disability? It results from something interfering with normal brain development. For 2/3 of the children diagnosed with an intellectual disability, the cause is unknown. However, there are some common causes. They could be a genetic condition such as Down syndrome, problems during pregnancy that interfere with fetal brain development, problems during childbirth where the baby is deprived of oxygen in the birthing process, or illness or injury either to the mother or baby during pregnancy, for example, the mother contracting measles. As educators, it is not our role to diagnose an intellectual disability. However, we do need to be aware of the diagnosis process. There are two components that are assessed when diagnosing an intellectual disability. The first test is for intellectual functioning or mental ability. This is assessed using an intelligence quotient or IQ test. If a person is diagnosed with an IQ score below 70 to 75, they will be diagnosed with an intellectual disability. The second part of the test assesses a person's adaptive behaviours. These are the skills required for everyday life, such as a child's ability to carry out self-help skills, how they communicate with and understand people, and how they interact with their family, friends and peers of a similar age in a social situation. These two assessments combined will indicate whether or not a child has an intellectual disability and the severity of the diagnosis.
There are multiple characteristics to an intellectual disability that are diagnosed based on the intellectual function and behaviours as mentioned above. The IQ test was a clear indicator of Bradley's intellectual function. The characteristics of a mild intellectual disability reflected his cognitive abilities, where he was unable to comprehend abstract thought, reason, and problem solve. A combination of observations from healthcare professionals, educators, and family members were used to assess his adaptive behaviours over time. From these observations, it was evident Bradley had difficulties self-regulating his emotions within learning tasks and social situations, organising himself for transitions to new tasks, and expressive and receptive delays. The characteristics of Bradley's intellectual function that influence his inclusion in the classroom include low academia, cognitive development, language skills, and attention difficulties. Bradley has difficulty learning to read and write, which will impact his progress in all curriculum areas. Bradley's intellectual function influences knowledge and understandings of reading and writing, including letter-sound relationships, phonemic awareness, spelling difficulty, and decoding strategies. He struggles with basic mathematical concepts without concrete materials and is unable to process more complex mathematics for his year level. Low academia skills will impact his overall learning and inclusion within learning tasks, leading him to fall behind his peers and develop low self-esteem. With a lower intellectual function, Bradley has multiple cognitive factors that influence his inclusion in the classroom. Bradley processes instruction and information at a slower rate than his peers. He has difficulty applying the conceptual knowledge he does understand to different learning contexts, and he is unable to think abstractly and understand logical concepts without concrete materials. These factors are addressed in the IEP to develop specific instructional strategies and resources for Bradley's inclusion in the classroom. Bradley's adaptive behaviour is evident by analysing his receptive and expressive skills that are undeveloped for his age. He has difficulty processing new information and following verbal instruction. Bradley's language skills will influence his self-esteem and impact how he collaborates with his peers and ability to communicate new knowledge and understandings. Bradley's intellectual function is reflected through his ability to sustain attention in independent and group learning tasks. He finds it difficult to organise new information independently to complete learning experiences. His ability to stay on task with learning experiences will cause him to become distracted by external factors, such as his peers, or easily frustrated with himself in challenging tasks. Mild intellectual functioning will delay overall learning with language, developing social skills, and competency developing independence of daily tasks. Learning will require repetition when learning new skills with the support of diverse strategies for inclusiveness within the class. These elements of academic achievement, cognitive development, language skills, and attention difficulties will influence the IEP goals and instructional approaches implemented by the educator to include Bradley in a regular classroom setting.
To foster inclusive learning environments for children with a mild intellectual disability, educators need to critically plan their lessons to incorporate the following visible and explicit strategies. They are explicit instruction, the universal design for learning, assistive technology, and various embedded instructional strategies. I will discuss each strategy and demonstrate how they can be used in practice to aid Bradley in his learning. Explicit instruction is a systematic method of teaching with emphasis on proceeding in small steps, checking for student understanding, and achieving active and successful participation by all students. Students are guided through the learning process with clear statements about the purpose for learning a new skill, clear expectations and demonstrations of the instructional target, and supportive practice with feedback until independent mastery has been achieved. Initial practice is carried out with high levels of teacher involvement. However, once students' success is evident, the teacher's support is systematically withdrawn and students move towards independent performance. The Universal Design for Learning focuses on designing a curriculum and instruction acceptable for all children, rather than making changes to accommodate throughout the lesson. This is achieved through three multiple means of representation, engagement, and expression. Firstly, we need to incorporate multiple means of representing materials, instructions, and lessons, including strategies such as describing, modeling, and using gradual release of instructions to teach concepts. Multiple means of engaging children in concepts are based on their interests and abilities. This includes breaking down concepts, defining words, and using graphic visuals to represent their own work and self-monitor their progress. Lastly, multiple means of expression is a child's preferred means of output. Children can work in partners to share information, write, design, draw, or use technology to express their understandings throughout the learning process. If we were to apply explicit instruction and the Universal Design for Learning to a very basic lesson planning guide, it would look like the following. In the introduction of a lesson, the educator would gain students' attention, state the goal of the lesson, and discuss the relevance of the target skill, and most importantly, review prior knowledge. In the body of the lesson, the educator would Model or demonstrate the skill first, so I do it. Then provide prompted or guided practice, so we do it together. And lastly, provide unprompted practice, so you do it, the independence. Lastly, the conclusion of the lesson would review the critical content, discuss what the children have learnt from the lesson and what was valuable to them, and preview the content for the next lesson, and lastly, assign independent work. Assistive technology is tools for educators to implement and provide to customize education to meet individual needs. Later in the presentation, we will view an educator using multiple communication aids to scaffold the students' learning, and then we're able to see assistive technology in practice. The following video example is of an educator working through an addition problem with Bradley. Can you list elements of these instructional methods to what is present in the video example? Today we are going to be doing an addition sum. Now we started this yesterday, so we're going to re-look at yesterday's questions and then we're going to do some more sums today. So when we are adding, we are combining our two numbers. So the question we have today is 2 plus 3 equals what? So I'm going to do it first, then we'll do it together, and then you will do it by yourself. So 2 plus 3, I'm going to put 2 down on my board, and then I'm going to add 3 more. 1, 2, 3. So then I'm going to add them together. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So I know that 2 plus 3 equals 5. Now I've got the choice of writing out on the whiteboard or the iPad. I'm going to choose the whiteboard. So I'm going to write 2 plus 3 equals 5. Now let's do it together. We can just put ours underneath. So we're going to do 2. So I've got 1 and you've got 2. Then we need 3. 1. Can you say it out loud? 2,
3.
Beautiful. Now let's add them together. Can you point with me?
1,
2, 3, 4, 5. So we know that 2 plus 3 is
5.
beautiful. What are we going to use to write our answer out? The iPad or the whiteboard? The iPad, beautiful. So can you write the sum out for me? Awesome, so you wrote 2 plus 3 equals 5. Well done. Now it is your turn to do the sum by yourself. We can see that the educator made sure to explicitly explain the intentions of the lesson today and review prior knowledge before moving on to another stage of the concept. The educator planned the lesson with knowledge of Bradley's IEP and included hands-on concrete materials and a gradual release of instruction to keep Bradley on task. So as we can see above, the educator has incorporated multiple other elements of instructional approaches to tailor the lesson to aid Bradley. Therefore, we can see that incorporating these strategies through the pre-planning process ensures that lessons are structured in a certain way to achieve equal participation and inclusion for all students. These strategies aim to include all children in the learning process effectively, and all needs are considered before the learning process, not during or after.
There are several changes identified that will assist in developing Bradley's social and emotional skills to provide better social opportunities for him. Through observations combined with discussions and information obtained from Bradley's family, it has been identified that Bradley struggles to regulate his emotions in social situations, particularly when he is experiencing feelings of frustration. In an effort to teach Bradley emotion-based social skills, we will focus on one emotion per session, beginning with frustration. Visual supports will be used to assist Bradley's development of understanding, recognition, and expression of his own emotions as well as those of others. These visual supports incorporate Bradley's interest in robots through the use of a robot emotions kit, which includes an emotions chart, an emotions identification activity, an emotions spin wheel, a robot activity and colouring book, and a feeling strength bar. The framework of these sessions will be the same. An example session on understanding frustration would include 6 steps and go as follows. Firstly, we would use the identification activity to isolate the robot frustration card. Secondly, the skills being addressed will be introduced through the use of a scripted video social story or a pre-made booklet social story. Thirdly, we will link social situations and emotions by identifying scenarios where Bradley has felt frustrated. In the 4th step, the feeling strength bar will be used to rate the intensity of the feeling. First, the educator will model the use of the feeling strength bar before Bradley uses it to rate his feelings of frustration in the aforementioned scenarios. In the 5th step, we will use scenarios identified previously with additional situations that were observed to increase Bradley's feelings of frustration. Have Bradley label the feelings and rate the intensity of those feelings of frustration using a large floor-sized feeling strength bar. Finally, a task will then be set for Bradley to take away from the session. For example, he needs to use the feeling strength bar to determine the intensity of his feelings during a real-life situation where he is experiencing feelings of frustration. In addition to the emotion-based social skill sessions, an area in the classroom will be designed for Bradley to utilise when he is experiencing overwhelming feelings and needs a break. The area will include the robot emotions kit or sections of it that can be rotated, a small mirror to observe his own facial expressions, soft cushions or a beanbag, and writing materials.
Every child that receives special education services must have a written IEP, Individual Education Plan, and how that IEP is created depends on the policy and procedures the school has in place on dealing with students with special needs. The school that Bradley attends prides itself on fostering a culture of inclusion where community members, students, teachers, other school staff, parents, and members of the broader school community come together to collaborate positive and supportive values. This school has a specific learning support team which helps the teacher and other stakeholders discuss and share information through meetings. This school is continually sending staff for professional development to constantly improve their support to the student and all stakeholders. Foreman and Arthur Kelly says that the purpose of the learning support team is design an education program that meets specific students' individual needs. Within the learning support team at Bradley School, there are 2 specialised teachers, both who specialised in special needs education. One teacher is assigned to Bradley, working with him in a small group 4 times a week to develop his phonics and report to his classroom teacher on a weekly basis. There is a team that is then made up to implement and assess current IEPs for Bradley. Parents are part of the IEP team and are an important part due to knowing the child better than anyone else. The classroom teacher, learning support teacher, and the psychologist make up the rest of the IEP team. Running alongside the learning support team is the school psychologist who sees Bradley on a fortnightly basis. He was part of implementing Bradley's IEP for this year and has reported on his conceptual, social, and practical domains. When constructing an IEP, sources of information are required and come from many areas. The child will have several stakeholders who can assess the child's strengths and needs, including their parents, who provide a perspective on their child that is different from that of the professionals involved. The classroom teacher, present and past, are a central source of information about the child's strengths and needs and strategies used that were successful. Schools' records are a good source of information that demonstrates the child's performance. There is a checklist that many schools use to make sure that the required information has been collected for the planning process. Discussion on key factors with stakeholders are important because it can help all who are involved to get to know the student better and understand what goals are to be focused on. Through these meetings, stakeholders can share ideas and concerns for the student, providing each other with multiple perspectives. Open communication among the stakeholders allow everyone to be exposed to the latest strategies and tools and to be able to support each other in their roles. Stakeholders meet to solve any problems that may arise during the terms. Supporting the parent is essential by listening and offering strategies and resources that can be used at home. Each stakeholder has a clear understanding of their own responsibilities and meet during the year to assess the student's goals. The best way to support the student in your class with special needs is to have regular communication with their parents. Any misunderstandings can be avoided by simply being in regular contact with the parents and being open to hearing their concerns. Some parents may feel embarrassed that their child is needing additional support for their disability. Parenting can be quite complicated, and special consideration is taken when dealing with parents. When communicating with parents, express the achievements as much as the challenges with your child. Always express to them that you see the child and not their disability. The aim is to get the parent on your side working together for the good of the child. Communicate all information to the parents that have come from the specialty teachers, school psychologists, and any concerns that have come up with other teachers. Any meeting that is needing the parent input, make sure you invite them. If they are unable to attend, suggest a telephone conference or live video chat. As a teacher, the parent partnership is essential to your child's success. Without it, the child will grow, but not as much as when they have a parental support along the way. It is important that the teacher and parent communicate on a regular basis to assist both parties. For example, if a child has not got enough sleep the night before or is having a reaction to the latest medication given by the doctor, the teacher needs to know. No matter how small the communication, it still matters with the performance to the child.